Chords. Chords. They're important. They give emotional impact, build harmonic structure. They give support to the melody. What can't they do? So this is why we're going to talk about the music theory behind chords. Because we did it for melodies. I'm going to link that video up above. To understand chords, you're going to need to understand scale degrees. And pretty much this is just a way of numbering all of the notes in your scale from 1 to 7. So the root note of your scale would be 1. This is also called the tonic. And this acts as the home of your scale and it's very stable. Then we can go up to the 2. This is also called the supertonic. Next, we have the mediant or the third. The 4th scale degree is called the subdominant. Then the 5th scale degree is called the dominant, and it's the second most important scale degree because the root is more important. Going up to the 6th, we have the submediant, and then the 7th is the leading tone. But plot twist, we are in a natural minor scale. So because we're in the natural minor scale, this is actually called the subtonic. And for it to be the leading tone, it needs to be a half step below the root note of the scale. And a half step just means 1 piano note away. Like that. Now store this in your brain because we're about to actually talk about chords, and then we're going to combine the two and talk about progression. That's how it works. The most basic chord of them all, we have the major chord. It sounds happy, bright, and you can recognize this chord by the major third interval because on top of it, it will have a minor third interval. Staying with basic chords, we have a minor chord. It sounds sad, and you can tell it's a minor chord because we have this minor third interval. It has a major third interval stacked on top of it. Now, if you want to build tension, you're going to need to be familiar with diminished chords, and these are built just by stacking a minor third on top of a minor third. They sound dramatic, they create tension, and they're used to lead to more stable chords in the progression, like the tonic. See, I told you the scale degrees would come back. Augmented chords are where you have a major third interval stacked on top of another major third interval. Just like diminished chords, they create tension. Typically, they're used to transition chords and also add a sense of unresolved tension. Then we have the major 7th chord, and this is just where you have a major triad with a minor triad stacked on top of it. It sounds warm, jazzy, a little bit sophisticated, and if you use it, it makes you sound like you're a smarter producer than you actually are. Plus, it sounds good. Just like the major 7th, we have a minor 7th, and that's where we have a minor chord with a major triad stacked on top of it. It makes that minor chord sound a little bit more complex, while giving it a smoother and bluesy feel. It's also pretty common in pop music. We also have the dominant 7th chord. This chord creates a lot of tension, and it resolves back into the tonic. The 7th chords don't stop there, because we also have the minor 7th flat 5 half diminished chord, and this adds a bit of tension just like diminished chords do, but the dissonance is a bit softer, so it's a little bit nicer on the ears. It's also got a pretty mysterious kind of sound to it. And finally, we have the diminished 7th chord. This chord is extremely unstable, it sounds dark, it's tense, it's dissonant, and it leads back into the tonic to resolve that tension. Now, when you're making chord progressions, you typically want to start or end on the tonic of your scale. So that just means the first chord in your scale. You can use the dominant 5th to create some tension, and this tension will resolve back into the tonic. You can throw the subdominant 4th in there as well, just to add some movement. You can incorporate some secondary chords like the 2nd, 3rd, and 6th. These chords will add variety and lead back into your tonic or your dominant. But if you don't like that, you can end on the diminished 7th chord, which has a really strong pull back into the tonic. Let me end on the 6th because I like the 6th. And because this is an extremely common chord progression. Now, when you're making chord progressions, it's a great idea to start out simple, just like this. And if this is too much, you can start out with some bass notes. It's important to pay attention to the voice leading. And this pretty much just means having smooth transitions between your chords. And the best way to have smooth transitions in your chords is by moving as few notes as possible. So now our chords look like they are much closer together, so they'll be a lot smoother. Shabam. It's also really important to balance and release tension. So for example, here I'm ending on the secondary chord that's going to lead back into my tonic. So that's going to be a little bit of tension that's going to get released by my tonic. Now from your pretty basic chord progression, you can expand on it by adding other notes higher up, just to kind of create a more complex sound as you go. And you can do this either by just stacking notes that are already in your chord, like I'm doing here, or you can add non-chord notes to imply or make a more complex chord without even really knowing what you're doing. And And one of the most important things for you to do with your chords is add rhythm. Because if you have this generic basic bounce, this basic rhythm, your chords suck. A big part of music is rhythm. And there's a lot of ways you can add rhythm to your chords. You can either do it by arpeggiating the chords. You could also just cut the chords up so that they have a rhythmic component to them. You could even just cut out some of the notes from the chords rhythmically. But when you put all of this together with a little bit of experimentation and finding what chords and sounds you like, you'll end up with a complex chord progression that actually sounds good.